the term black swan came into popularity in the mid 2000s. And I think after the success of people who coined the term, I think people continued to look for the next black swan and found many of them when they weren't really in existence. The term black swan actually dates from colonial Australia, believe it or not. The British explorers were exploring Australia. I think it was Captain Cook, but don't hold me to that one. Were exploring the west coast of Australia when they came upon what is now the city of Perth and those environs, and found that it was inhabited by black swans. They'd never seen these things before. It was very unusual. It was an out of the blue event, and that terminology has come to mean basically anything that happens that's very unexpected. And in a more localized terminology, it means something that's a low probability, high outcome event, generally with a negative outcome. And coronavirus may actually qualify as a black swan because no one saw this coming. The outbreak, started in a one corner of China, one city of it. China, of course, being the most populous country on earth, and the city of Wuhan being a large city by any normal global standards. But for the most part, it seemed to be unusual, but in one small corner of the globe. But people get very scared when these things spread so rapidly. And I think people really didn't have a chance to process the spread of the virus, the economic outcomes that could come from it, and how it would ripple through the world economy. First and foremost, and I've written about this, contagion is not necessarily only a physical thing, it's a mental effect. And I think people, if they start feeling fearful, fear is contagious. And fear, when it's manifested in stock market terms, tends to get manifested through volatility and selling of the assets. And I think that's what we're seeing now. I think we really won't know if this virus is a black swan for some time yet. It's premature to say that because we don't really know where this sell-off ends and where the course of the virus goes and what its economic effects are. But to me, it's a black swan it's like a black swan, I should say, in the sense that as it became very clear to the markets and market participants that this was going to have impacts greater than a couple of small places, relatively speaking, in one country, and that this could have global impact. And by the way, that this area of China produces a lot of things that are used in supply chains elsewhere, and that you have again, the world's most populous country, essentially on lockdown and through large parts of it. This is going to create problems. And you don't always see where those problems are going to go. And so Apple was pretty much the first to acknowledge that there might be a problem in their supply chain from coronavirus. I think you're going to start to hear about other countries doing so. Actually, Hyundai and Kia, I believe, had already signaled that prior to Apple, but the U.S. markets largely ignored it because it was something in Korea, not in the U.S. But Apple, of course, is too big to ignore for the equity markets. And I think you're going to start to hear this ripple throughout. The other thing you're going to start to hear is during earnings season, companies blame everything on coronavirus because it's a convenient thing to blame stuff on, such as weather or some of these other things that companies use if their numbers are impacted. But right now, it's too early to say whether this is a true black swan, some exogenous event that was very, very difficult, if not impossible, to see coming, that has a broad global effect on risk assets everywhere. And we'll see where that takes us. I'm not going to call it a black swan yet, though it does potentially have the makings of being one.